Hello, welcome to the Daily News Ukraine channel. Today is February 16th and our daily review of news about Ukraine. Russian troops struck the settlements of 3 districts in Kharkiv region. The towns of Vovchansk and Kupiansk suffer the most. Over the past day, the settlements of Kupiansk, Kyiv, and Bohodukov districts of the region came under enemy fire, Ola Chernihiv, head of the Kharkiv Regional Military Administration, posted on Telegram. In particular, the enemy fired tanks, mortars, and artillery at Chernihiv, Kupiansk, Vovchansk, Dvorykna, Spitlikn, and other settlements. In addition, the occupiers launched airstrikes on Chernihiv and Joly. Yesterday, after the morning shelling of Kupiansk, at least 6 private houses and outbuildings were damaged. Fires broke out. The village of Dvorykna also was under enemy fire. Windows were broken in several private houses there, Chernihiv added. At 11 o'clock, Russian troops shelled the village of Spitlikn in Zaluzhnyi territorial community with Urigan multiple rocket launchers. 1 household and power lines were damaged. After 11 o'clock, the enemy hit Vovchansk with artillery. 3 private houses were damaged there. Read also, Zaluzhnyi updates on Russia's overnight attack, 16 out of 36 missiles shot down at night. After 2,300 hours, the Russians struck Kupiansk again. A hangar, garages, and 5 cars, including 2 buses, burnt down. The area of the fire was 700 sqm. Fortunately, there were no casualties. Active fighting continues on the contact line. Our defenders are reliably holding their positions and repelling the enemy, said the regional governor. As reported, 29 settlements in Kupiansk district in Kharkiv region remain temporarily occupied. Over the past day, the Russian invaders shelled Kherson region 52 times, injuring 3 civilians. In the regional center, the enemy targeted a wharf, a botanical garden, and the homes of Kherson residents. Over the past day, 3 people received injuries of varying degrees of severity in Russian shelling of Kherson region, the Kherson Regional Military Administration informs. As noted, Russian invaders attacked Kherson region 52 times. Peaceful settlements of the region were struck with MLRS, mortars, artillery, tanks, and UAVs. The Russian army attacked Kherson city 21 times, targeting residential neighborhoods of the city. It is noted that enemy shells slammed into a wharf, a botanical garden, and the homes of Kherson residents. Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko has met with Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly in Kyiv and shown her the consequences of Russian attacks on the capital. The relevant statement was made by Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko on Telegram, and Ukrinform correspondent reports. I met with Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly and showed her the consequences of Russian attacks on Kyiv, which result in destruction and the death of peaceful Ukrainians, Klitschko wrote. Klitschko thanked the government and people of Canada for providing military, financial, and humanitarian aid to Ukraine. Additionally, Klitschko emphasized that it is extremely important for Ukraine to receive a new batch of weapons that Canada has recently decided to provide as soon as possible. The American news magazine Time has released a cover with a school basement in the Chernihiv region's village of Yahidne, where the Russian military locked 368 local residents in March 2022, and 10 of them died subsequently. The relevant cover was posted by Time on Twitter, and Ukrinform correspondent reports. Photo, Time. Additionally, Time published a story about this basement with the recollections of eyewitnesses. On March 3, 2022, Russian occupiers entered the village of Yahidne. They drove local residents out of their homes and locked them in a cramped school basement. Civilians, including children and the elderly, were prevented from leaving the basement until March 30, 2022, when Russian invaders were forced to retreat. Photo, Andriy Bashtovyi, The Reckoning Project. In June 2022, Ukrainian law enforcement officers served 8 Russian soldiers with charges over the death of 10 civilians in the Chernihiv region's Yahidne. Photo, Andriy Bashtovyi, The Reckoning Project. Photo, Natalia Humeniuk, The Reckoning Project, Andriy Bashtovyi, The Reckoning Project. In January 2023, 2 more Russian servicemen were served with charges over keeping 368 civilians hostage in a school basement in the Chernihiv region's Yahidne. Last night Russian missiles hit infrastructure facilities in the Kirovohrad region's Kropivnitsky district, the Poltava region's Kremenchuk and the Lviv region. The relevant statements were made by regional military administrations, and Ukrinform correspondent reports. A restless night. Survived another enemy missile attack. In the early morning hours, an infrastructure object was hit in the Kropivnitsky district. Emergency services are working at the scene, Kirovohrad Regional Military Administration head Andriy Rakovich wrote on Telegram. In his words, no casualties were reported. 3 Russian missiles also struck a critical infrastructure facility in the Lviv region, Lviv Regional Military Administration head Maxim Kozitsky noted on Telegram. According to Kozitsky, it was not a power-generating facility. Thus, the damage caused will not affect power supply services in the Lviv region. Civilians remained unharmed. Additionally, a critical infrastructure facility was hit by Russian missiles in the Poltava region's Kremenchuk. 2 Russian missiles struck a critical infrastructure facility in Kremenchuk, Poltava Regional Military Administration head Dmytro Lunin wrote on Telegram. In his words, enemy drones were also detected in the Poltava district during Russia's overnight attack. The anti-aircraft defense units activated. No casualties were reported. Israeli Foreign Affairs Minister Eli Cohen has come to the Kyiv region's Bucha as part of his first visit to Ukraine since the Russian full-scale invasion started. The relevant statement was made by Ambassador of the State of Israel to Ukraine Michael Brodsky on Twitter, and Ukrinform correspondent reports. Visiting Bucha with Israeli Foreign Affairs Minister, Ed. Eli Cohen, Brodsky wrote, having posted the photographs. A reminder that, on February 16, 2023, Israeli Foreign Affairs Minister Eli Cohen arrived in the city of Kyiv, for the first time since the Russian full-scale invasion started. Photo at Michael_Brodsk. 6 civilians have been killed and 13 injured in Russia's shelling of the Donetsk region over the past day. The relevant statement was made by Donetsk Regional Military Administration head Pavlo on Telegram, and Ukrinform correspondent reports. On February 15, 2023, Russians killed 6 civilians in the Donetsk region, 3 in Pokrovsk, 2 in Bakhmut and 1 in Avdiivka. 13 more people were injured, Kirolenko wrote. Additionally, it is now impossible to count the exact number of casualties in Mariupol and Volnovakha, Kirolenko noted. A reminder that, on February 15, 2023, Ukrainian forces repelled more than 15 enemy attacks in the Luhansk and Donetsk regions. Last night Russian troops struck the Dnipropetrovsk region's Pavlohrad with missiles. 1 civilian was reported killed and 7 injured. The relevant statement was made by Dnipropetrovsk Regional Military Administration head Serhiy Lysak on Telegram, and Ukrinform correspondent reports. A terrible night in Pavlohrad. At 3 a.m., as people were peacefully sleeping in their homes, the enemy struck the city with missiles. A 79-year-old woman was killed. According to the preliminary data, 7 civilians were injured, Lysak wrote. A man, 79, and a woman, 37, were taken to hospital in moderately grave condition. According to Lysak, an industrial enterprise was also hit and caught fire. Rescuers had already extinguished it. 7 detached houses were destroyed and 30 seriously damaged. The effects of the enemy attack are yet to be checked. Israeli Foreign Affairs Minister Eli Cohen has arrived in the city of Kyiv, for the first time since the Russian full-scale invasion started. The relevant statement was made by Israeli Foreign Affairs Minister Eli Cohen on Twitter, and Ukrinform correspondent reports. My visit today is the first by an Israeli minister since the war broke out. Israel has stood by the Ukrainian people over the past year, and by Ukraine, and today we will hoist the Israeli flag in the embassy in Kyiv as it returns to full operations on the path toward a stronger relationship between the countries, Cohen noted. As part of the visit, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the State of Israel will meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Ukrainian Foreign Affairs Minister Dmytro Kuleba. He will also travel to the Kyiv region's Bucha. On the night of February 16, 2023, the Armed Forces of Ukraine destroyed 16 out of 36 missiles fired by Russian troops. The relevant statement was made by Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine Valery Zaluzhnyi on Telegram, and Ukrinform correspondent reports. According to Zaluzhnyi, Russia again targeted Ukraine's critical infrastructure with missiles. Between 1:40 a.m. and 3:45 a.m., February 16, 2023, the enemy fired air and sea-launched cruise missiles, guided anti-aircraft and anti-ship missiles, Zaluzhnyi wrote. In general, Russia used 36 missiles, namely 12 Kh-101/555 air-launched cruise missiles, 8 caliber-type sea-launched cruise missiles, 12 Kh-22 air-launched anti-ship missiles, 3 Kh-59/31 guided anti-aircraft missiles, 1 Onyx anti-ship missile. Russian missiles were fired by the Tu-22M3 and Tu-95MS strategic bombers from near Kursk and the Caspian Sea, as well as the Su-35 aircraft from the temporarily occupied city of Melitopol and cruise missile carriers from the Black Sea. The Armed Forces of Ukraine shot down 14 enemy cruise missiles and 2 guided anti-aircraft missiles, Zaluzhnyi noted. Today we were talking about those news. Russian troops strike 3 districts in Kharkiv region, damaging houses and power lines. Invaders hit Kherson region 52 times in past day, injuring 3 civilians. Mayor Klitschko, Canadian FM Joly meet in Kyiv. Time magazine releases cover with school basement in Chernihiv region's Yahidne under Russian occupation. Russian missiles hit infrastructure objects in Kirovohrad, Lviv, Poltava regions. Israeli FM Eli Cohen visits Kyiv region's Bucha. 6 killed, 13 injured in Russia's shelling of Donetsk region. Dnipropetrovsk region's Pavlohrad struck by Russian missiles at night, casualties reported. Israeli FM Eli Cohen arrives in Kyiv. Zaluzhnyi updates on Russia's overnight attack, 16 out of 36 missiles shot down.